Thank you everyone for this week. So this week we're looking at your report writing. So in these sections, I just quickly want to address report writing specifically. So I know I've received a number of queries relating to how do I write the perfect report? How do I what are the components? What are there in the report? What are you looking for? What are examiners looking for when they are reading my report? How do I answer the questions of the report? So that's why I've decided to say, you know what, I if I need to respond individually to all the questions and all the queries, and the number of the queries are quite lengthy as well, I thought it would be much more useful to have a short videos explaining what you need to do. How do you actually write a report that meets the requirements, that even maybe perhaps even exceed the requirements of what we're looking for. So that's why I put up this particular video to explain that to you in terms of looking at report writing. All right. So my attention today will be around the report writing itself, and I will try to explain without missing words. So I will try to explain the assessment brief itself, and of course I'll start to look at the content of the report. I'll start to look at the stages of writing the report. I'll start to look at the marking scheme, for example, and see how we map that to every section in your report as well. So I will give some example. I hope that you find it really useful. So so of course we know report writing is different from an essay. Report writing is different from an essay. And you're going to see in the course of this very short conversation that I'm having with you, that writing a report is completely different from when you're writing an essay, because a report is much more a structured writing compared to an essay that's possibly you break down in paragraph without necessarily having any headings on it. But report, as you're going to see, has required you with some specific instructions, and the best way to start to look at it as well is probably to start with your assignment brief or the assessment brief. So the first thing you want to start with is to understand the assessment brief, and I'm going to talk you through each of those stages, and of course we're going to look at specific questions relating to your modules. Now we'll look at the questions, and of course we go through that, and we try to from there try to understand how we can break that down into what the markers are looking for. So at the end of the section, so what I hope that you understand the assessment brief itself. Week 8 is also dedicated to that. We provide an assessment support. So you're going to have your Q&A on that in week 8, and of course I want to look at what really makes a good report, and also look at stages in report writing, and I will try to recap what we've done from week 1 to week 8. So let's just continue. Let's look at the assessment brief first. So, so this is assessment one. So assessment one, it says is a report, is not an essay. So you try to understand the difference between a report and an essay. A report is a structured writing. So it's different from an essay where you're writing mostly in paragraphs without necessarily having a heading. And that's one way you can easily distinguish between an essay and a report. And with a report, so you have different sections, or depends on what you've been given. Your examiners or your tutors may have given you specific ways in which you need to structure the report. In this particular instances, and this particular example, I'm going to talk you through what we actually expect, and this is obviously much more applicable to any type of report whatsoever that you may likely to see. So the type of the assessment itself is report. So bear that in mind, and that is to suggest that you must not present your answer as an essay. Okay. The length is actually 1,250 words, so not more than 10% over the word count, and this word count exclude the title page, it excludes the executive summary, it excludes the table of contents, it excludes the reference list and the appendix that you may have in the report. So the title page, for example, is where you have it's like your cover page. Your executive summary is like an abstract. Your table of contents will usually contain all the headings and the pages where they are found, where they can be found within the body of the report. A reference list will be all the works you cited in the body of your report. An appendix are things that maybe perhaps instead of going over the work counts, you've cited them within the body of your work, and of course you can make reference to them. And the weighting, this particular assessment one is what 60% of the overall mark. And the deadline is 18th December, 11:59 a.m. in the morning. And you should submit your work through Turnitin, right? The return date is 5th February 2021, right? So this is the basic stuff. So let's get into the nitty gritty of the thing. So the first thing to note is the instruction that to write your answers in report format. I've mentioned that before. You need to write your answers in report format, not an essay, report format. That's why I've highlighted in red. So here is a question. So assuming this is the question, this is your assessment one question, right? So the question is, the impact of COVID-19 have reached across the globe, directly affecting millions of organizations or companies, intensifying existing business challenges for managers. So every crisis is difficult, of course, we know that, but in creating all crises are risks and opportunities. So that's something to just clear. All right. So put that in as a background, right? Know that okay. Therefore, as a manager in an organization, what you need to do is to propose an approach that can help your organization bounce back from crisis and thrive amidst uncertainty in the business environment. So what this is asking you to do is that you need to select a specific organization. You need to select a specific organization that have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic crisis that is currently still ongoing, right? And you are to propose how that organization can bounce back from crisis and thrive amidst the uncertainty or the challenges in the business environment. So that's something to note. So you must select a specific organization. If you don't select a specific organization, that means you're writing in abstract. That means whatever things you're writing vague. You've not really addressed the question, because the question is asking you to make reference to a specific organization. So as a manager in an organization, so you need to be mindful of that. And your job is to propose an approach that can help that organization, assuming you're a manager in that organization, that can help that organization to bounce back and thrive in the midst of the chaos in the business environment. So topics from week 1 to week 8 of this module will be relevant when you're looking at this. What we're looking for is the application of these topics. What we're looking for is the application of these particular topics. So again, that's something that you need to be mindful of when you start to look at this. This particular question is related to your module learning outcome from 2 to 5. So 2, 3, 4, 5. It excludes learning outcome 1 and 6. So that's how it starts to your learning outcome of the module itself. So I think your seminar tutors and everyone will go through this report writing, report marking scheme with you. So on the screen, I've tried to, as much as possible, to provide a bit of what we call report marking scheme as a guide. So you have your introductions, you have where you, in the introduction, that's where you provide a context and an objective for your reports. You have a section around literature review. You may want to ask your seminar tutors as well, because I can't go into talking about literature review itself. That could be a different video, a different lectures on its own. You have your literature review, where you reviewing existing studies relevant to whatever concept, whatever ideas or notions that you pick from the organization management that you want to use as a basis for writing your report. And then, of course, we expect you to have a finding sections, and you have your discussion implication sections, and also have your conclusion and recommendation sections as well. So these will be the things that the markers will be looking at. So, for example, in the introduction, so has the student selected a specific organization in their report? Have you selected specific organizations? Have you defined the key terms? Have you provided very clear background information relating to these organizations which you selected? Have you clearly state the aims of your report and link that to the relevant topic within organizational management that can help us understand how this organization is going to bounce back from crisis and thrive in the midst of uncertainties in business environments? So of course, we also recommend some word count against each of these, because the total word count there is 1,250. So 1,250, of course, we know from there you can your literature review. So the recommended are just these are just recommended stuff. So 350 here, findings around 350, discussions and implications around 250, and of course 150 for conclusions and recommendations as well. But you can flip it. The idea is that you should try as much as possible to be creative. So this is the marking guide, and of course it will be available on your Blackboard. So once we know that, the other things that we want to know is, let's just look at the general marking guide. So this is the detailed report marking scheme by grade band. So it starts from 80, all right, so 80 to less than 40, and these will tell you what are the key things that the examiners will be looking out for within the report itself. And bear in mind the previous slide as well, what I've mentioned in terms of each of the section guide, what was there. So these would be the key things that obviously the examiners will be looking out for. Bear in mind, look at this section here within your report: introduction, literature review, findings, discussions and implications, conclusions and recommendations, and of course you have your reference list as well. These would be areas where examiners will be paying attention to as well. So the question then is, what makes a good report? So bear in mind the question that I posed, that is your report questions, right? So what makes a good report? So obviously there are a lot of resources that is available out there in terms of what a good report looks like. But for me, I think a good report will present and analyze facts, provide evidence that are relevant to specific problem or issues that have been asked you to address in the report brief itself. And that's why it's important to understand the brief itself, because if you don't understand the brief, if you don't understand the question, what the question is asking you to do, then you cannot analyze, there's no way you can present a good fact and evidence relating to that particular problem or issues that have been raised in the brief. And of course, you also need to make sure that all sources are appropriately acknowledged and referenced throughout in your report. And as well as you want to be able to gather relevant information as well, and evaluate these informations and analyze them within the context of your report as well. So when you're writing, I think there's need to bear in mind the need to write in a logical and coherent order, in a well structured orders as well. And that's why I provided that guiding in terms of the different sections or the suggested content within the report itself. So it needs to be consistent based on the instructions that obviously you've been asked to look at. And of course, you need to make appropriate conclusions as well. Make sure that you've actually answered the question. I think that's the key thing when you're coming towards the end of the report itself. And of course, where thoughtful practical recommendations where it is needed. In this case, for example, in your case, you've been asked to propose an approach that can help an organization to bounce back from crisis and thrive in the midst of uncertainties in the business environment. So that proposals could come as a way of recommendation. So, for example, we expect that your report will have recommendations in there. So the structure of your report should be title page. So your title page is the first page is the cover page. So that's really important. So you have the cover page, and then you have the executive summary. Executive summary will briefly describe the content of the report, what's in the report. You have your table of contents. I've mentioned that before. So you have your table of contents that shows the different headings and page numbers in the report itself. You will then go to have your introduction. So introductions will set the scene for the main body of the report. This is where you have your aims and the main objective of your report. If you're selecting a specific organization, you need to show us which organizations and why has this organization been affected by COVID-19 crisis. So you need to show us, maybe if you want to include more information relating to these organizations, you can put it in the appendix and reference it in the introductions. For example, and of course you go to literature review. So when you start to look at literature review, so this is where you review an existing study relating to a specific topic that you've selected that you think can help the organization to bounce back from crisis in the midst of the uncertainties surrounding the business. So and you draw insight from this and connect it to the context of your report. We're not expecting you to have a method sections in this particular report. This is not expected for you to have. Okay, this is not expected because you just have limited word count. In some other report, they may require you to have a meta section, but for this report, we don't expect you to have this meta section. And if you must have it, you can have this and move it straight in the appendix and make reference to maybe just a line, make reference to that method section. Now, the findings section. So the findings section, this is where you present a summary of the results of your investigation. All right. Based on you can use diagram, you can use graphs, tables in order to show support for your result, for your findings. So this is what you present. Okay, what did you find from the piece of research that you've done relating to that particular organizations which you have selected? So the discussion sections, this is like the main body of the report where you discuss your materials, where you discuss your findings, right? So you present your findings previously, and then you look at facts and evidence that you've gathered, which you're now trying to analyze with specific making reference to that specific findings within that particular organization. You kind of discuss that at this particular stage. Now, your conclusion, it should show why that report is really important and what is its cover. You can remind the readers the point that you have made, the conclusion that you have reached, and you're not trying to present new materials or introduce new materials at this particular stage. So many students make that mistakes. Don't introduce new materials or new ideas at your conclusion stage. We want to see what led you to the conclusions for which you're making. I think that's really important. Why are you making that conclusions? What informed that conclusion? Is it based on your discussion, based on your findings? Where is that coming from? We want to see where it's coming from. Okay. And then recommendations. This is where you're making very clear, specific, actionable points or recommendations for the chosen organizations for which you've selected. And of course, we then go on to references where you're looking at you're trying to follow the recommended referencing format. Look at your module handbook is there. Appendices, this is where situations where some of the things that you obviously you can't fit in because you have limited word count, you can put it in the back of your in the appendix after the references. So these are the structures in terms of what we're looking for. Now, writing the report itself. So there are the essential stages. There are a couple of stages that obviously I just thought maybe this would be necessary. Maybe some of you who have not maybe written report before, or you've been written one before, just a reminder. Okay, so I just thought I could quickly talk you through this. So it's in stage one of the report. So the stage one is to understand the brief, understand the questions, understand what the examiner is asking you to do. I think it may seem very obvious, but I think before you start to write, it is important that you understand what is it that they're asking you to talk about. What is it that they want? So try to understand that. And if you don't understand the questions asked, and that's why we're dedicating week 8 to provide that extra support as well to everyone on the module. So that's the stage one. So stage two is where you, once you understand that, you're trying to gather and select information that can help you to answer the question. And you need to be clear in terms of the directions in which your report is going to go. There are a number of topics that have been taught in this particular module. So, and I'm going to do a recap of some of those topics, for example, that can just help you. For example, think about, okay, maybe this area, this is the topic I'm going to concentrate on, and then you gather information around that particular topic that can help that organization to bounce back from crisis. So you gather information relating to the report, to the areas you want to concentrate on. Remember, you cannot do everything because you have a limited word count. The idea is that we want originality, we want creativity, and that's why the report question, the assignment brief has been made open to allow for that. So once you've gathered all the information and select all the information that you need, you want to organize those materials as well. And I think that's where it is really important that you can group these maybe around points that you want to make. And then, of course, this can help you if you have different maybe subheadings or that can help you to be able to do that. And once you do organize your materials, you can analyze those materials as well. That can happen when you start to write your literature review. You're trying to be critical, providing a balanced argument within the literatures, and you then go to a stage where you're doing the writing of the report properly. So within this slide, you see a couple of things. I'm not just going to read them. You can read them later, but the key thing is that you want to introduce the main ideas of the chapters or the sections or the paragraph, explain and expand the ideas so you can define the key terms that you've used in the report. You also need to present those relevant evidence to support your points as well. I think so many students obviously sometimes make very sweeping statements without supporting evidence, and that's not a good way to go about some of these things. Where is the claim coming from? So where's the evidence to support those claims, those views as well? And of course, you want to very clearly show comment on how this evidence, all these points relates to the context of your report as well. And you want to conclude, make a point that you're trying to make. I think that's really important to make the point that you're trying to make as well. That is absolutely important to note. So the sixth stage is to review and redraft. So sometimes you have to draft multiple drafts. Sometimes a number of us makes a mistake that the only draft you need is just the first draft. I will encourage you to look at what you've written and then possibly redraft it, and then go back and proofread. Look at it. Is it clear? If you can, seek feedback from maybe peers and get peers to review it, get your tutors possibly to have an insight, to have a look if they've offered to, and also trying to look at when you the final stage where you're doing the presentations, you can just quickly look at the marking scheme and see and tick. You can even mark yourself. Are you satisfied with the content and structure of your redrafted report? You can look at what the examiners are looking for. I've showed it to you. The marking scheme is there. We are available to you, so you can look at that. So try to match what you've seen with what you've got. So proofread it more than once. You can use the MS Word spellings and grammar checks as well. Proofread it and make sure that it is free from unnecessary, avoidable error. So let me just quickly do a recap in terms of what some of the things that we looked at from lectures 1 to 8. So in week 1, we look at introduction to organization management. In that week, I think our attention was mostly around the natures of organization management. And we also look at the natures of risk-facing organizations and why organization management matters. And we then look at what makes a good managers and dynamics of business environments as well. Organizations operating in business environments. So that's what we essentially, that what week 1 is. So you'll find some ideas. Not all things in week 1, for example, will be relevant to the context of your report, but there are certain things that you will find in week 1 that will be relevant. So I encourage you to possibly go back to the pre-record lectures in week 1 and see. That will give you the tone to understand the dynamic natures of risk that organization actually face. So in week 1, we ask questions around how do you manage organization in the face of crisis, disruptions, or complexity. These kind of tie to the questions around your report as well. So go back to week 1, see what you can take away from there. So in week 2, we look at planning and goal setting, right? So we look at with different plans, we look at goals, we look at their relationship, we understand the purpose of planning and goal settings. So for example, there's some ideas from these particular lectures in week 2 that you may just extract, that you may find useful, that you want to apply. Like I said, what we're looking for is the application of the topics that have been taught. In week 3, we look at organizations in crisis. We define what organizational crisis is. We look at what crisis is. We look at why crisis management matters. We look at the Grenell's models of organizational growth and crisis chronology. We try to look at the different stages of the Witzel and Johnson models, and some of these models are actually quite much applicable, and you can pretty much see what you can do with them. The idea is be creative. Organizational resilience was looked at in week 4. We looked at the ideas of helping organizations to bounce back from adversity, from crisis, from disasters. We define what organizational resilience is. There are a lot of literatures around this area. And of course, you can also look at the purpose of organizational resilience was also discussed, and we'll also look at why resilience matters in today's business environment. So this is another interesting lecture. Obviously, you can also go back to look at as you try to write your report. In week 5, we look at strategic innovations. We define what innovation is. We explain strategic innovations, and of course, we try to understand the need for strategic innovation and the core elements of strategic innovations as well. We also look at we apply this particular concept actually of strategic innovations in organizational context. And one of the key takeaway from me was the issues around the 3 core constraint elements of strategic innovation. And of course, you can look at some of these things and you can apply them within the context of your report if that's in areas that you think it can help organization to bounce back from crisis. That's something to look at. In week 7, we'll look at learning from failures, learning from crisis or disaster, for example, why organizations learn, individual learning organizations, organizational learning and its applications. We look at when does organizational learning actually occur, and learning organizations, the elements, what makes organization actually learn. So we can see how you can apply some of the things that have been taught in these particular lectures. Will also be an interesting lectures to look at. You can look at the pre-record lectures for week 7 on learning from failures. Perhaps you might also look at it. In this week, I've just recently also posted a pre-recorded videos around ethics and corporate social responsibility. Bear in mind, this was not released on time because it's also an assignment support week. But ethics and corporate social responsibility are also a useful way in which organizations are trying to gain legitimacy. I know this is just the first versions of the lectures, and second versions of the lectures we'll be looking at concentrate more broadly around corporate social responsibility. So many companies are using corporate social responsibility as a way to gain legitimacy, to build their reputations, to increase their brand visibilities in the business environment. So this may be something, obviously, some ideas around this that you may want to pick out. It is up to you. But in this particular lecture, I define what ethics and corporate social responsibility are. looking at their relationship, and also we also understand why ethics matters. We understand ethical dilemmas and approaches to ethics, and we try to look at ethical models and ethical decision makings in organizations. So this is the point where I am going to call it a day. And of course, if you have further questions relating to your assessments, especially report writing, engage with your tutor, and of course, you can also send me an email. But of course, week 8 is completely dedicated for assessment support. So thank you so much uh, for listening, and of course, we continue to engage and provide with the right set of support that you need at this particular time. Like I say, try as much as possible. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, so try to look watch it for it, because more materials are available relating to this that you may also find useful. So thank you so much, and of course, I will see you next time in week 9, where we'll be looking at ethics in corporate social responsibility part 2.